Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Namaste, everyone. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you. Before we begin with our Q&A session, as always, first we will say some invocation words. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Om Hri Om. Again, everyone, namaste. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for joining us for our wonderful puja. Once again, we have a temple full of wonderful devotees of a variety of ages, in some cases babies, in some cases a little bit older than babies, but not quite adults, and many adults as well. So it is absolutely wonderful to be here again with an audience here in our temple, as well as our live audience all throughout the world. And let me say that what we're going to be doing today is indeed that, someone made the comment that the sound is very, very quiet. So I don't know if we want to address that first before I proceed. Let me ask people, okay, some people are saying it seems to be normal sound quality. All right, most people are saying it sounds normal, so that's good. All right, very good. In that case, we'll just assume it's normal, and I will proceed. As people know, last week I gave a lecture that, of course, went over time by quite a bit, and we did not have time for questions and answers. So as I promised everyone, what we're going to be doing today is exclusively questions and answers. So if anyone out there has any questions, or here actually in the live audience, if anyone has any questions about Sanatana Dharma whatsoever, then please feel free to ask those questions. And we're going to try to end on time, because after the live stream is over, we're going to be having an initiation ceremony as well as a sacred fire ceremony, what is called Agnihotra Yagya. And that's something that we are all prepared for here in the temple, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. We won't be airing that live. Indeed, we will end as soon as the questions are over. But again, if people have any questions out there, please feel free to ask. Good, good. Here is a nice question, actually, that I will definitely address. It's the very first question that I see here and is from Varsaga, and it is, Namaste Acharyaji, what does it mean to be completely reliant on God's mercy? Very nice. And indeed, this can be asked in a variety of ways, to be completely reliant on God's grace, on God's mercy, on God's love, etc. And let me answer that first very quickly, very quick answer, but then I'll go a little bit deeper into giving a full answer. What it means to be completely reliant on God's mercy is really to recognize that we are reliant on God's mercy. So in other words, the truth of the matter is we're always reliant on God. We are always dependent upon God. Now, for some individuals, people with, let's say, a more humanistic sort of bent, that sounds like a very scary idea. Oh, dependent upon someone? I don't want to be dependent upon anyone, upon anything. And the truth of the matter is, interestingly, ordinarily, dealing with material life, that's actually a good attitude to have. We should indeed try to be as self-reliant and independent as possible. But this is in conjunction with flawed material things and people. But now we're talking about God. God is the one thing that we are and that we must be and that we must acknowledge that we are dependent upon. The reason why this is the case is because God categorically is different from anything in our material experience. When we say we're dependent upon God, it's not like saying we're dependent on government. We're dependent on so-and-so down the street. We're dependent on this oxygen machine. We're dependent on, then fill in the blank. It's not the same thing. It's categorically distinct. The reason why is because when we are dependent upon something that is flawed, well, then, of course, there is the danger. That thing being flawed, well, we are dependent upon that thing, that person, but being flawed, well, we can end up being hurt, being damaged, etc. But when we talk about being dependent upon God's mercy, God's grace, God's love, etc., again, we are talking about a being that is ontologically distinct, anterior to, and radically transcendent in comparison to materiality. This being the case, we're talking about being dependent upon the perfect, the perfect good, the perfect love, the perfect beauty, etc. This is what God is. This being the case, we are always dependent upon that. The difficulty is, of course, that in our illusion state, we don't acknowledge that. Indeed, we try to be independent, but in an artificial way. Again, to be independent, an independent person, I'm an independent person. To be an independent person in the world is a good thing. But to make the mistake of thinking that we are independent of that which is our source, oh, that is when we cut ourselves off from that source. And now, just like a flower that's been cut off at the roots and is no longer connected to the ground and can no longer get that sustenance, can no longer get all the nutrition it needs. Well, now, thinking in illusion that we are independent of God, we are in misery. So indeed, to answer your question, we are to acknowledge that we are dependent upon the mercy, the grace, and the love of the divine. And that is the spiritual process. That is why we practice any legitimate form of spirituality, any authentic form, any form of spirituality that will actually bring us to a positive goal, to a real goal. It is acknowledging that indeed God is all and all. So I hope that answers the question. Give me a few moments as I look at some more of these questions that are here. Another very good question. Humble obeisances, Acharyaji, is penance still relevant in the Kali Yuga, i.e. pilgrimages or denial of various material items, or should one focus on sadhana, self-improvement, before seeking initiation? Tapasya, penance, austerity, is indeed still very much of importance in the Kali Yuga, and specifically today. Now, of course, when we say this, we have to keep in mind that if we look at how various forms of spirituality have been practiced from yuga to yuga to yuga, of course, we see somewhat of a difference in emphasis, that is, which of these practices are of more importance. We also see the intensity with which such practices are even possible. So when it comes to penance, very specifically, when it comes to the idea of tapasya, yes, we cannot practice tapasya in the same way that people did in the last yuga, in the Dvapara Yuga, or the Treta Yuga, or the Satya Yuga. However, even having said that, even today in 2023 of the Kali Yuga, indeed, we are to continue to practice penances. We are to continue to practice austerities. Now, the thing is, as I said in the past, when it comes to the practice of such austerities, we need to do so wisely. In other words, we shouldn't damage ourselves. We shouldn't take vows where at the end of the vow, we're going to end up having damaged ourselves physically or in some other way. No, we have to do penances for a purpose, for a reason. We have to do penances that, while difficult, will ultimately benefit us. They'll make us stronger. They'll make us more disciplined. They will deepen our communion with God or with the gods, etc. So to do penances is still something that is of great importance, actually. Indeed, without going into detail, in my lifetime, I've done many tapasyas. I took many different vows of tapasyas, some of which actually, and I'll admit this because I was very young at the time, I did tapasyas throughout my life, but especially when I did very serious ones. I was about 23 or 24 at the time. I went a little bit too far, actually, but just due to innocence, just due to over-enthusiasm, etc. So I did some very wild penances, actually, that did end up taking a little bit of a toll on me. And it's from experience now that I can say this so many decades later, that indeed, when you do austerities, you want to do so with balance as much as is possible. But yes, such penances still very much apply. Very good, and give me a moment, please, as I look at some more of these questions. Very nice. Here is a good question. It is, my humble obeisances, Acharyaji. It is your causeless mercy upon us that you dissipate our ignorance by perfect answers. Thank you very much for saying that. I'm very humbled by you saying that. What is the value of silence for one who has taken to spiritual life? It is extremely valuable. Extremely. And in fact, let me say that if you study the history of religion, of religious people, of yogis, of sages, of saints, etc., etc., you'll see that indeed this was recognized by almost all of them, actually. That there are periods in your life, if you're practicing spirituality, where you need to practice silence. Indeed, the Sanskrit word for this is mauna, meaning taking a vow of silence. And it doesn't mean for the rest of your life, obviously. It means for a certain period of time. Some people, some yogis will take a vow that, for the entire day, for the next 24 hours, I will be in silence and just contemplate. Or longer. Some people will do this for a month, etc. So it's definitely something that's nice to do as a vow, but more than this, even in daily life, actually. Let me say, I've said this in many contexts, in many different ways. I've said this to many people, to many individuals. Some of my students, actually, who in the past have had the problem of talking too much. I've actually said this to some of them, that it is more powerful usually to be silent than constantly talking. This is something, Govinda agrees. This is something that indeed all spiritual practitioners need to understand. That the individual in the room who is constantly talking, while they may initially have a lot of attention focused upon themselves, indeed, often that's why they're talking, is because they want attention. While that might be the case initially, the truth of the matter is such individuals are not taken seriously by the wise. Rather, when you walk into a room, you see, this is why, I've said now it's become a big thing on the internet, this whole idea of alpha versus sigma. Alpha versus sigma. Now you can go to YouTube, there are 100,000 videos that talk about this as if this is something new. I've been talking about this for 35 years, actually longer than that. In fact, I've been this. When you walk into a room full of people, the person who you should actually take seriously is the person who is standing in the corner, is silent, but you are aware that they are aware of everything that is occurring in that room. That's the person to take seriously. That's the person who something bad happens in that room suddenly, that's the person who's going to help everyone. Not the other one in the opposite corner who's just talking, and has a little circle surrounding him. Rather, look for that sigma. Look for that individual who is not constantly chattering, but you look at the person and you realize they have a quiet dignity to them and a wisdom to them, such that, again, when they are needed, that's the person who will go into action. And you turn around, look for the chatty person, and they've already jumped out the window. So indeed, silence is something that is crucial. More, let me talk about silence in sadhana. As you can tell, I can talk about this quite a bit actually, because it is important, this concept of mauna, of silence. When it comes to sadhana, to spiritual practice, indeed there are individuals, and let me say this because again, I have been on the Vedic scene, one could say, for 50 years. For 50 years, since the early 70s. And I've seen it all. I've seen all sorts of spiritual practitioners, and specifically on the Vedic scene. There are some individuals who will take Vedic spirituality very seriously, but their idea, again, is that their mouth has to be constantly moving, even in the saying of mantras, even in just constantly saying, speaking, etc., without ever there being even a short period of time where instead of talking, instead of saying, instead of even reciting mantras, they're instead in silence contemplating. You see, I've said this many times, that communication with God, like communication with anyone, is a two-way street. Oh, yes, we want to be constantly praising God. We want to be constantly saying the names of God. We want to be constantly speaking about God, etc., etc. But at what point do we be silent and wait for God to respond? Unless we have the ability to do that, then we are talking at God and not allowing God to respond within our heart. See, this is why proper meditation is, oh yes, you recite mantra. No one can educate us about reciting mantra. This is our practice, mantra meditation. This is what we do constantly. But at the same time, we also believe in our meditation in having those important periods of merely being silent, focusing on the breath and now allowing God to speak to us. Having those moments of true contemplation and communion with God in such a way that now in silence, we go into silence, and that silence is now permeated with the very voice of God himself responding to us. So yes, silence is something that is crucial. That's extremely important. So thank you for asking that. Very good. Everyone, please give me a few moments as I look at some more of these questions. And again, just a few more moments, please. Trying to look at as many of these questions as I can. Very good. Andrew Biggins, very nice. Let me answer this question, actually. You say, may I ask, writers such as Julius Evola, claim that political action is useless in the Kali Yuga. What is your view? I have tremendous respect for Julius Evola. Let me say I've read pretty much everything he's written in the English language. I know about him. I know his whole entire history, etc., etc. I have tremendous respect for him. Personally, I derived zero of my ideas from Julius Evola. On the contrary, Julius Evola derived many of his ideas from Vedic spirituality, indeed, including the very term Kali Yuga itself. I always have to point this out to perennialists and radical traditionalists who think that Julius Evola possibly created this term, Kali Yuga, or that it goes back to maybe the 1920s or something like that. No, the term Kali Yuga is a Sanskrit term. It goes back literally millions of years, not thousands, but millions of years. It's found all throughout the Vedic scriptures. It's found in every single Purana. It is spoken of extensively in all the Puranas and Mahabharata, etc., etc. So indeed, Julius Evola was a very good writer. His great strength was this, that he had the ability to take pre-existent knowledge, i.e. Vedic knowledge specifically, and to translate it in such a way that the denizens of modernity had the ability to then understand some of these ancient ideas in relation to what was happening throughout the 20th century. Now, all that being said, again, I have tremendous respect for Evola, but you ask, he claims that political action is useless in the Kali Yuga. Indeed, riding the tiger. I've actually spoken about this tremendously. He passed away in 1973. It's 2023 now. Things have changed dramatically. And let me say, while I do not want to talk about politics overtly in any way, we as followers of Sanatana Dharma believe in engaging in the world in every way imaginable, bringing the force of Dharma, the purity of Dharma, the life-sustaining teachings of Dharma to every single sector of humanity. That includes business, that includes religion, philosophy, academia, aesthetics, that includes culture, that includes entertainment, that includes science, that certainly includes economics and politics. So in 2023, today, I've made the statement many times, the time to ride the tiger is over. Now we have subdued the tiger. Now we have subdued the tiger. And indeed, we are going to establish a Dharma nation. So I hope that answers the question for you. Yes, please.
Acharya, I've heard it said that karma gives you everything you need to succeed where you are. I'm just wondering, is it my karma that I was born into this age as opposed to a different age?
Good question, actually. So is it your karma that you were born in this age versus a different age? When it comes to such questions, see, this is something I always have to remind people. When people think of karma, they will sometimes think of karma as all in all. So in other words, that everything is karma and karma is everything. Karma is one factor to be considered as far as, why do I find myself in X situation? Anything. Why did I win, why do I have $1 million in the bank? Why this? Why that? Why am I suffering because of this? Karma is one of the factors involved. There's also free will because, of course, what does karma even mean? We have karma because of free will. We're making free will decisions every moment. So there is free will, there is karma. There is destiny, which is something different from karma. What do I mean by destiny? God's will, the will of the gods. So in other words, it may be the case that we find ourselves in a specific situation, maybe a little bit because of karma. There can always be a little interplay, but also sometimes truly because of free will. Sometimes, often truly because it is God's will, or the will of the gods, or let's say higher beings, that we find ourselves in a specific situation, whether in this age versus a different age, etc. So yeah, that's why it's truly not black and white when it comes to the idea of karma. Karma is a very, very important factor, and indeed, let me just state this very bluntly. The more advanced a being is. And what do I mean by advanced? Oh, the wiser they are, the smarter they are, the more virtuous, the more good, i.e., the more in control of who they are. So the more advanced a person is, the less karma is a factor, if that makes sense. For a person who does not think for themselves, a person who is not in control of who they are, a lot of what happens to them is just karma, 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 karma. But when you're an individual who you have a lot of self-mastery, karma's still there, but it's reduced a lot. Rather than it being, 90% of the causes of what happens to you, it ends up being 20%, 10%. Again, depending on how advanced a person is.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Very good. Yes, and again, thank you for asking that. Let me reiterate, if anyone here wants to ask anything, please feel free. But for now, we'll go back to the questions here. Very good. Let me answer this. I've answered this several hundred times, but always one-on-one. I don't believe, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe I've ever answered this next question on a live stream. And it's an important one. It is, Namaste Acharyaji, what is the origin of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra? I never got a clear answer on this from temple management in ISKCON. Very good. And neither will you ever get a clear answer. Let me tell you, I have had discussions about this with not temple management. I won't name their names, but some of the top gurus in ISKCON who are alive today, one of whom was one of the original 11 gurus who took over immediately after Prabhupada. I have had this discussion with members of the GBC. And not only did some of them attempt to give me, again, the runaround like others have with you, several of them admitted to me that what I'm about to explain is indeed correct. So what I'm about to tell you is not conjecture, it's not sectarian opinion. Indeed, those leaders of ISKCON who were honest, including some very big authors, again, I'm not going to name their names, one author who I've known myself for close to maybe 45 years, roughly 40 years, something like that, they all admitted that I was correct in what I'm about to say to you. There is no Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It does not exist. Now, let me explain before people get very riled up in the audience. Number one, Maha Mantra. Again, specifically, I asked one of the first 11 gurus, who is still a guru in ISKCON, who has many thousands of disciples. I asked him face to face. Literally, he was about 4 feet away, maybe 3 feet away from me. This was in Los Angeles, roughly 1998. Maharaja, can you please explain to me where the term Maha Mantra is found anywhere in the Vedic scriptures, and specifically associated with what you call the Hare Krishna mantra? Needless to say, he couldn't. He could not in any way, shape, or form. This was an individual who was, I believe, about to, or maybe he just finished completing his PhD. He knew Sanskrit, etc., etc. And I then said to him, Maharaja, here's my email address. He knew my email address. I was doing this for dramatic form back then. Maharaja, here's my email address. When you find such a reference, please send it to me. That was 1998. I still haven't heard back from him. There is no such thing as the Maha Mantra. That's not found in the Vedic scriptures. And again, I've challenged many people. For those who are riled up in the audience, I've challenged people smarter than you. And they cannot give me an answer on this. It does not exist, and especially associated with the Hare Krishna mantra. Now, all that being said, there is a mantra in the Kali Yuga Upanishad that is there. And the mantra is, and this is the exact mantra that is written. Now online, some sneaky people have tried to change it because digitized, you can change anything. but I have the actual physical books. Many people do. The mantra is Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. This is the correct mantra. So indeed, the Rama portion comes first, the Krishna portion comes after. This is the mantra as it exists in the Vedic scripture. The other way around, i.e., how ISKCON teaches it, does not exist in the Vedic scripture. And again, if some individual wants to go to some ISKCON website where they supposedly have a translation of this Upanishad and copy that, paste it, and send it to us and say, oh, you see? No, I will show you a print version that I have in my library. I actually have quite a few print versions in my library where, no, the Hari Rama comes first. Again, online, you can change anything. And it has been changed, very sadly. This is one drawback of having Vedic scriptures digitized, where again, a person can go in and do whatever they want, versus it being in print form, what to speak of the original Sanskrit. I have the original Sanskrit. And indeed, any Vedic scholar, any academician, any professor of religious studies who knows Sanskrit will confirm without hesitation what I am saying. So all this being said, again, the correct mantra is Hare Rama comes first, then Hare Krishna. This was altered in the early 1700s, roughly give or take a decade, because again, I'm going on memory. I did the research myself. Many people have actually. Approximately 1730, give or take a decade. Again, I'm going by memory of 35 years ago when I first encountered this. The mantra was switched, where the Hare Krishna came first, then the Hare Rama. The reason why it was switched was because in the Mathura area, there was a challenge to the early Gaudiya Vaishnavas. They were teaching the mantra correctly, Hare Rama and then Hare Krishna. They were teaching it correctly in Gaudiya Vaishnavism up until roughly the 1730s. What happened, and this is all documented, there are court records that show this. Again, this is not speculation. I have a PhD. I've seen this all. Any person with a PhD who has studied Sanskrit, who is what some people would call an Indologist, today we call them specialists in South Asia, South Asian religion, languages, etc. Anyone with that expertise will confirm what I'm about to tell you. So there was the Maharaja, Maharaja of Mathura. He was approached by a group of Orthodox Brahmanas who were upset that the Gaudiyas were giving initiation to Shudras, and they were giving them what was a Vedic mantra, a mantra recognized in the Upanishads. Well, the king chastised the Gaudiyas, and he said, you cannot do this. Baladeva Vidyabhushana, who was one of their leaders at the time, came to the king. They had negotiations, and finally Baladeva Vidyabhushana said to the king, Maharaja, we understand. What about this? What if we were to change the mantra slightly, say Hare Krishna first and then Hare Rama? That way, it's still the same mantra, but it's not officially the Vedic mantra as it exists in the Shruti literature. Would that be acceptable? The Orthodox Brahmanas thought about this and they said, yes, that will be acceptable. And that's when the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That is when that mantra in that form was born. And again, you know, for those individuals who are Orthodox ISKCONites out there and they're throwing their hands over their ears right now, etc. No, all the evidence is there. Again, I've spoken to top leaders. Oh, I can name them. You'll recognize their names immediately. I've spoken to top leaders of ISKCON, GBC people, top gurus in ISKCON. Again, either they would not say anything, and several of them indeed admitted that this is the story. Several of them, people on the GBC, gurus, one extremely prolific ISKCON author who's been writing for, again, something like 40 years, who has dozens and dozens of books out. I had a personal conversation with him in New York decades ago, where he actually told me the story. that I just told you. And he is an Orthodox ISKCONite, very respected. So indeed, doubt me if you wish, due to blind fanaticism, that is the truth. This is the origin of the Hare Krishna mantra. Now, all that being said, now I have to talk about the all-important spiritual aspect of this. This historic change having in fact come about, again, early 1700s. Does this mean that chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, indeed, as taught by ISKCON, does this mean that, this is now ineffective? Absolutely not. I've said this to hundreds and hundreds of ISKCON and former ISKCON devotees. I've said to them, no, this is the name of Krishna. If you wish to say the Hare Krishna mantra the way it is said in ISKCON and meditate upon the Hare Krishna mantra, please do so. And if you do so with devotion, you can have liberation. These are the names of Krishna. They are ever liberating. However, technically speaking, you cannot claim that the Hare Krishna mantra is a Vedic mantra. Vedic means revealed in Shruti without change. The mantra that is revealed in Shruti, that is in the Upanishad, without change in the original is Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So again, you can say it either way, and you will have benefit. But if you want to say the Vedic mantra, say it the way that I just said it, and meditate on it in that way. So I hope that answers the question for you. Good. And with that, we still have a little bit more time. I'll see if I can answer a few more questions. Very good. This looks like an interesting question. Namaste. Is it possible to have a dharmic society that includes large numbers of individuals who are not dharmic? If not, how to bring these individuals into Dharma, particularly in the context of India? Very nice. Very good. Let me indeed answer this. In any dharmic society, in fact, let me answer this very, very thoroughly. In any dharmic society, ideally, 100% of individuals will adhere to Dharma. In fact, let me state it with this exact terminology. I do not choose my words at random ever. It is better if everyone is adhering to Dharma, meaning that at the very least they indeed acknowledge that Dharma is something that is of value, that indeed it is wonderful to follow Dharma. Doesn't mean that they're following perfectly necessarily, but at the very least, if 100% of people are at least even nominal followers of Dharma, that is the best. What is second best is if the majority of individuals in a Vedic society are following, and yes, of course, you can certainly have minorities of individuals who are not. Indeed, talking about India, throughout the history of especially Kali Yuga India, in Kali Yuga India, meaning going back quite a few thousand years, you had Buddhists, for example, you had Jainas, you had individuals who were not necessarily following Vedic spirituality. Interestingly, of course, they were still following Dharma. Their own somewhat different, but not really that much different idea of Dharma. But indeed, Sanatana Dharma as a worldview is something that is actually very, very tolerant of the idea that it shouldn't force itself upon others. It should try to positively influence others, but not force. Now, all that being said, when you have very specifically individuals in your society who are following ideologies that are adharmic, now we're talking about something different. And let me say, because I know India intimately better than most Indians do, indeed, better than most Indian politicians do. When we're talking about India very specifically, there are large minorities of individuals who are following ideologies that are anti-dharmic. This being the case, what should be done is that such individuals should be very gently persuaded to follow Dharma. Now, that being said, what does that mean? Number one, India has to eventually become indeed truly a Dharma nation, which it's not. No, not a Hindu nationalist nation, not a quote-unquote Hindu nation. It has to become a Dharma nation. It has to be a nation that follows all of the Vedic prescripts and proscripts. It has to be a truly Dharma nation. Now, that being said, the way that such individuals who are following anti-dharmic ideologies will reform themselves is by example, by following the example of those individuals who are following Dharma and who are following Dharma perfectly. In other words, yes, we know that the majority, 83% roughly, depending on who you listen to, of India is quote-unquote Hindu. That's meaningless. That's meaningless. Because how many of those 83% of Indians in India are following Dharma, meaning they are vegetarian, meaning they do puja every day, meaning they follow the virtues and the ethics of Sanatana Dharma, meaning that they study the Vedic scriptures, meaning that they believe what the Vedic scriptures are teaching them, and they don't try to scientificize everything in accordance with modernity. But no, they try to follow Vedic scriptures authentically. Now, when the majority of so-called Hindus in India are actually following Dharma, by their example, all those who are anti-dharmic will also begin to follow. Not 100%, of course, because there will always be a small smattering of individuals who are simply demonic. But let's reduce that percentage as much as possible in the nation of India and throughout the world. So indeed, we are to bring these individuals to Dharma. No, not forced conversion like other religions do, blah, blah, blah. No, by our example. Have your neighbors who are anti-dharmic see you doing puja with your family every day. Let them see you not drinking alcohol. Let them see you be a strict vegetarian. Let them see you, etc., etc., etc. And in that way, India will eventually become a Dharma Rashtra, a dharmic nation. So that's my challenge to all of my beloved Indian students in the audience out there, especially if you're in India. Oh, practice Dharma. Don't just say, "Main Hindu hu." I am Hindu. That's meaningless. Practice Dharma. And that way you will change yourself, you will change your family, you will change the world for the better. Very good. Please give me a few moments as I look at some more of these questions. And we only have a few minutes, and I said I'm going to try to end as close to on time as possible. As close to on time as possible. But I'll see if maybe I can answer one more question, maybe two. Very good. Here is a good question, and it is my obeisances, Acharyaji. Thank you so much for your time. Absolutely my pleasure. Obeisances unto you. A question on Atman's nature. There are female and male forms present in Vaikuntha. Has Atman got a gender? Yes, indeed. First of all, yes. Number one, you're correct about this, that when we go to Vaikuntha, yes, we see variety, we see diversity. We see that there are men, there are women, we see that, there are many different species, there are trees, there are cows, there are beautiful birds who are singing so beautifully that the world's greatest symphonies cannot even come close to how beautiful is the melody, is the sound of these birds as they're singing in praise of God in Vaikuntha. So yes, there's tremendous variety. When it comes to those Atmans who specifically, let's say, look quote-unquote human, yes, there are men and there are women. And now you ask, has the Atman got gender? Yes, indeed it does. ultimately, when we achieve liberation and we go to Vaikuntha, we will indeed go to Vaikuntha either as a man or as a woman. Now, that being said, of course, this begs the question, well, so what I will be in Vaikuntha, does it correspond to my gender now? In most cases, yes. And let me go in depth to explain what's meant by this. Generally speaking, when we reincarnate, our gender does indeed reflect our Atman's gender. Generally speaking, once in a while, karmically, that will not be the case. And again, we have situations where, an Atman who generally is male, for example, and they tend to reincarnate mostly as a man, for some reason, let's say they were extremely abusive toward women in that lifetime. In their next lifetime, yes, they could be a woman. And it doesn't even mean a human female. They could, be any species, but indeed be a female. So once in a while that will happen. But other than rare instances like that, for the most part, what we are gender-wise is indeed what we are atmically. Now, of course, there are deeper questions also that we can talk about, but that we cannot, sadly. And you can probably guess what I'm talking about. We see psychologically that there are some individuals who, let's say, are born different. We'll just state that. There are karmic reasons for this too, but again, we cannot sadly go very deeply into that on this venue. But I hope that answers the question. Good. Give me one moment. Good. This may be the last, let me just check the time. This will be the last question that I'm going to take, sadly, only because, again, just due to time, we have a yagya and initiation that we're going to do. But this is from Siddharth. First of all, namaste, Siddharth. It's very wonderful to see you here. I'm sorry that we haven't had a chance to talk recently. I get busier seemingly by the second, but it would be wonderful to speak to you again at some point. You ask, Namaste Acharyaji, what does it mean to be a true man in today's society? I feel like there has been an attack on masculinity. Immoral behavior seems to be normalized also. Yes, indeed. And let me just say before I talk about this, and I will be talking about this in brief, because I've addressed this many times. Indeed, we have several videos out now where I talk about the art of manhood, what it means to be a man, etc. And then in addition to entire videos that are dedicated to this topic, I talk about this topic within videos, answering questions, etc. But generally speaking, let me indeed talk about this a little bit. First of all, there is indeed a standard for what it means to be a true man. For those individuals who would want to ridicule this, true man, what does it mean to be the... No, there is a standard. There's a standard for everything. There's a standard for what it means to be a true woman. There's a standard for what it means to be a true man, etc. And again, I've gone very in-depth into this, so I'm just going to scratch the surface of this a little bit. Indeed, what it means to be a true man, very simply, is a male who is fully comfortable with, who is in touch with, and who in a very healthy way manifests his inherent masculinity in such a way as to be fulfilled himself and a benefit to the world around him. How's that for a definition? That's what it means to be a true man, very simply. No, not machismo, no, not the stereotypes, caricatures that the demonic media has thrown at us since the 60s. Men are dumb, they just want to have their man cave, they only care about sports, they just want to grunt and scratch, and they want to abuse women, and blah, 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 blah. I can tell you in the ISDS, we don't have one man who fits that description. And truthfully, not just the ISDS, that's not a true man. What it means to be a true man is, again, similar to what I was saying before, an individual who is a sigma male, an individual who actually, for the most part, has a quiet dignity, who is not loud all the time, but who has a quiet dignity, but who cultivates wisdom, who cultivates virtue, who cultivates inner discipline, self-control, self-mastery, etc. An individual who is accustomed to self-sacrifice, that he is accustomed to sacrificing for his family. He is accustomed to being there for his wife, for his children, for his relatives, for his friends. He is somebody who can be relied upon, etc., etc. And I can give a list stretching further than my arm times 100. This is what it means to be a true man. Now, all that being said, indeed, to get back to your question here, there has indeed been an attack on masculinity. You say you feel as if there has been. No, there has been. You're not the only one. Everybody not only feels that, but knows it. There has been a concerted, purposeful attack on masculinity. As far as why, again, too in-depth to go into in this venue. In quite a few of my videos, I go very in-depth into what the motivations have been to have this concerted, very purposeful attack on masculinity. And to state it very simply, it's to make people weak. And why make people weak? Well, weak people can be conquered. That simple. So all that being said, indeed, we are too, that is, those individuals who are in the audience who are indeed men, you are to fully embrace your masculinity in a very balanced sort of way. Again, very balanced sort of way. You can be the sort of individual who can be, this is the standard, be as gentle as a lotus flower and as hard as a thunderbolt when needed. When needed. That's a man. That's a man. So with that, all right, I'm sorry, one more question. One more question. And then we're going to have our Yagyan initiation. Because as I ended that, I looked, and first of all, I see Ananta Shesha here. Ananta Shesha, namaste. It is absolutely wonderful to see you. I'm very glad that you're here. Again, like with Siddharth, I apologize. I've been out of touch with you for some time. If you understood why I've been out of touch with quite a few people, actually, you would be overjoyed at what's been keeping me very, very busy recently. But I'm very happy that you're here. And the reason why I'm going to answer your question is I ended with talking about lotuses, and now you ask about this. You say, "Dear Acharyaji, my humble obeisances unto you. How are we to best imitate the humble lotus flower when living in the world without absorbing any of the impurities of it?" Indeed, very good question. Let me talk about that for a moment. And sadly, this will be the last question that I will take today. Indeed, this is the example that is given again and again in the Vedic scriptures by so many legitimate gurus, etc. And indeed, you see this in Sanatana Dharma. You even see this in the offshoots of Sanatana Dharma. You see this in Buddhism. You see this in Jainism, that the enlightened being is compared to a lotus flower. This is why, again, in, let's say, dharmic imagery, South Asian religious imagery, you see the lotus flower again and again and again. You see the Buddha, you see gods and goddesses sitting on a lotus flower. It is because the enlightened being is compared to such a lotus flower. That, like the lotus flower is rooted in the earth, you know. Its roots go deep into the waters, and in fact, not just the waters, but they tend to be murky waters. I don't understand the science as far as why, but whenever you see lotus flowers and you look at the pond, it tends to be kind of murky. You can't really see inside of it very well. But despite that fact, the lotus flower grows from that water. It rises above the water, and then it shows its beauty to the world. So it's rooted in the world, but it's transcending the world. In the same way, we are to be like this. We are to be individuals who, no, we don't artificially reject the fact that, yes, this is where we are. We find ourselves in 2023 in the Kali Yuga, in wherever you're watching from. And despite that fact, we are to live as transcendent beings. We are to eventually have this same enlightenment where we are in the world but not of the world. And more, we also, like that lotus flower, have the ability to show our own inner beauty to the entire world to inspire everyone who sees us. So this is the idea of the lotus flower. But now you ask specifically, how do we become like that? The way that we become like that is by understanding the nature of both the water that we are rooted in and ourselves as the lotus flower. We need to understand both. So indeed, this is why in the Isha Upanishad it says that we are to understand vidya and avidya simultaneously. We are to understand the spiritual wisdom that is our salvation, and we are to understand the ignorance in which we find ourselves presently living. We have to understand both. We have to understand that both are important. We need to have a balanced approach to both. We need to understand what it means to, again, not with fantasy. See, too many people, sadly, when they turn to spirituality, it becomes a fantasy for them. Oh, yes, yes, I'm living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and New York, where I was just a month ago or so, actually. I'm living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York, and yet I'm going to pretend that I am an absolutely denounced yogi living here, meditating with all the car horns, etc., 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 and none of this exists. It's just an illusion. It doesn't exist. A police car just went by. Didn't hear that. Nope, I'm completely transcendent, and again, living kind of an illusion in the name of spirituality, a fantasy in the name of spirituality. No. We are to acknowledge where we are. We are to acknowledge the nature of this world, that you want to eat. Well, first, you want to live, you have to eat. You want to eat, you have to have a job. You want to have a job, that means you have to be engaged in the world. And unless you can do that, you can't pretend to be a meditator. You can't pretend, oh, yes, 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 yes. I am meditating, I'm a spiritual person, but oh, no, don't need a job, don't need education, no. That's not going to last more than a month. And again, there are too many people who do this. No, we are to understand that we are rooted in this world. We need to take the laws, the dharmas of this world seriously, but at the same time, like that lotus flower, also inwardly transcended. We are to be in the world, but not of the world. That being the case, we have to understand the nature of both. We have to understand how to operate in this world perfectly, and inwardly, as we are operating, we are focused 100% inwardly upon Krishna. This is how I live. Oh, I am in this world. I understand the nature of the world. I have my pulse on reality more than pretty much anyone on the face of the planet. I know what's happening. But at the same time, inwardly, I'm not in this world. Who else was like this? Prabhupada. Getting back to ISKCON. Really, ISKCON transcends, Prabhupada transcends ISKCON infinitely so. But let's talk about Prabhupada for a moment. Was Prabhupada a spiritual person? Is that a real question? Of course he was. And he knew how to operate in this world practically. He wasn't one of these people. Did he believe that ultimately all things came from Krishna? Of course. Did he say, oh, yes, I need to have money to build a temple. I'll sit here and, Krishna will just send the money. No, he worked to gain the money. He worked to get donors, to organize people, etc., etc. He worked very practically. And I can point to hundreds of other gurus who the same thing. They were fully transcendent, yet they knew how the world operated and how they needed to operate in the world if they were going to perform their seva, their service. Now, all this being said, it begins with this. We must understand the nature of both. We must understand the nature of this world and the nature of transcendence, the nature of the muddy waters and the nature of the lotus flower, which we are. And that being the case, artificially rejecting neither, we are to do everything that we need to be successful in this world. As I've said to all of my students, if you're going to be my student, Don't make the mistake of living in fantasy and thinking you're going to, oh, come here to this temple, live here with me, not have a job, not contribute anything to society, and live all your days levitating with me off the ground on the temple, in the temple. No. No. If you're going to be a spiritual person, you're going to have a job. You're going to eventually have a family. You're going to have children who you will have to take care of and who will wake you up at night. That's the world. But also, at all moments, even as you're hearing the wonderful sounds of your children, you're going to be focused on Krishna. You're going to realize what is the nature of even children themselves. You're going to realize that child is an Atman and is a gift from God. So indeed, this is how we do this, by recognizing the nature of both, and without artificially rejecting one or the other. Again, without becoming a radical materialist and saying spirituality, no importance, but also without doing the opposite. Oh, I'm a radical spiritualist. I'm going to live in a temple and just be chanting Hare Krishna, levitating 3 feet off the ground at all times and never open my eyes and even acknowledge this material world. No. Trust me, that's not going to happen for you. Rather, you have to have a perfect blending of both, using everything, including the material, in Krishna's service. And in this way, again, you will be that perfect lotus flower, rooted in the world, but transcending it, showing its beauty to the world. You will be in the world, but not of the world. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. With that, we're going to stop here. Again, I apologize deeply for those individuals for whom I could not get to your questions. I tried, but we're already 15 minutes over. One of my students predicted when I said we were going to end on time, that was not going to happen. Yes, you were correct. But at least we're not half an hour over. But indeed, we're going to stop here. Please join us again next week, next Sunday, and we will have another live stream then at 2 p.m. In the meantime, again, I thank you all very much for being here with us. Namaste. And everyone together. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vansha Jayate.
Surya Vansha Jayate.
Victory to Sanatana Dharma, the eternal natural way. Victory to the Dharma nation and the many Dharma nations that are about to be manifest upon our planet in the near future. Victory to the solar dynasty, the royal dynasty of kings that has been here since the beginning of time, from whom all of our natural-born rulers arise. And victory to those representatives of the solar dynasty who will rule again very soon. Evam bhavatu. May it be so. Very good. And with that, everyone, I ask you all to please take very, very good care of yourselves in every way.